Hey, my sweet friends, it is the last week of school, like the end of second grade. That is amazing. I know you're excited to just finish schoolwork and to start with summer. I know our year ended a little bit differently than what we had planned, and it definitely ended differently than what Miss Penny had planned, but that's just the way it happened. And so we tried to make the best of it. We did videos every week and we sent you your lessons home. And so I hope that overall that it has been very enjoyable. And I am so sorry that we did not get to end it the way that we wanted to, but I know that the Lord has been so gracious and so giving and has been so good to us to work out a way that we can still see one another. And we've been Zooming and we've sent videos and we've done little special projects, or you got some special mail and all that kind of stuff over the last 2 months. And so I'm just so thankful for each of you. And I just want you to know how much I love you and how much you mean to me and what a gift you were, because you guys were my first class at FBCA. And there's just something special about that. And I will not forget you for sure. And I know that you guys will do great next year in third grade, and I will get to see you every day as you go to class. Go to third grade. I'll see you coming down the hall. I'll see you at recess and lunch and all that fun stuff. But I know that you will do so great because you have come so far this year in second grade. So I'm just really, really proud of you, and I just want you to know. So week 8, our last week of school. And so this week for Bible, we are talking about a couple of stories. One of them is about when Jesus feeds the 5,000. And I know that you have heard that story before. And I know that you have, heard it at church, or you read about it yourself. But that is a really, really cool story that Jesus did. And so if we look at that story, we know that the stories of what Jesus did while he was on earth is recorded in the first 4 books of the New Testament. Do you know what those books are? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And this story is actually recorded in all 4 books of the Gospels, okay? And he sees this great need that is there where all these people need to be fed. And so he does one of his many miracles. And we know, remember, we've learned that a miracle is something that only God can do. Okay, it can only come from him. And so this is definitely one of those things. So as we look at this story, it occurs in all 4 books of the Gospels, but this one, the version I'm telling you is actually, with all these details, is actually found in Matthew 14. Okay, Matthew 14. And he and his disciples, remember last week we talked about how John the Baptist was killed, and how, remember, John the Baptist was one of the first one that God sent for him to prepare the way for Jesus, and to tell people to repent from their sins and what that meant, and to be baptized. He was kind of like John the Baptist was sent to kind of get people ready for the message that Jesus would come and bring. And so John the Baptist, unfortunately, was killed by King Herod, and we talked about that story last week. And so Jesus, hearing this news, and his disciples hearing this news, he went with them away to have some alone time with his disciples. And they got into boats and they headed across the Sea of Galilee, which is just like a big lake. And people, they had been following Jesus like by the thousands, because they were hearing about all of these things that he was doing, healing people and bringing people back to life, and making the sick people well, and making paralyzed people walk, and all this stuff, all these like cool, amazing things. And so crowds of people would follow him. And so Jesus decides to kind of like get away, and he takes his disciples in a boat across the sea of Galilee. Well, the crowds of people actually followed them. They walked along the around the lake to where he and his disciples were, and they actually got there quicker than he and his disciples did. So when they got there, when Jesus and his disciples got there were already so many people there. And Jesus had sailed away to be by himself. But when he saw the crowds, he felt compassion for them. Okay? He knew that these people needed him. Okay? And so when we have compassion on someone, then we kind of understand what they're going through, and we want to show them kindness, or we want to help them. And compassion is like greater than being kind to them. Okay, it's just really kind of like understanding their need and understanding that they're going through something that's really hard and wanting to help them. And so Jesus had compassion on these people. He didn't get frustrated with them and say, I came here to be alone and you followed me. No, he had compassion on them. So I want to encourage you at home this week to have compassion on the people in your family. Maybe your younger brother or sister or your older brother or sister are really bugging the snot out of you. Or maybe they're just having a hard time, and you just kind of want to be mean to them, or be, like, leave me alone. How can you have compassion on them? How can you help them and be kind to them? Okay. So the same thing with Jesus. He had compassion for them. He knew the people needed him. Jesus got out of the boat and let the people bring their sick friends and relatives to him so that he could heal them. He knew why they were there. When evening came, it began to get dark. The disciples became worried about the people who were so far away from their homes. They had walked really far to meet Jesus, to bring their sick family and friends there. And it was getting dark, and these people were hungry. They'd been there all day, okay? And they asked Jesus, they said, hey man, like, send these people home, because we don't have any way to like feed them or take care of them. Like, send them home. And Jesus said that the people didn't need to go away. He said they don't need to go. And Jesus tells his disciples, you give them something to eat. And his disciples were like, what? How do we do that? And Jesus says, you give them something to eat. There were 5,000 men. That didn't include all the women that were there and all the children that were there. So there could have been close to 15 or 20,000 people there. And he tells his disciples, you give them something to eat. And the disciples looked around for food to feed all those people, and they were perplexed. They were like, what in the world? They can only find 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to bring Jesus. That was it. And they were like, Jesus, this is all we have. This little boy had these 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. And the disciples said, there's no way that this is enough to feed 5,000 men and plus all those women and children. And so, but to Jesus, he knew that. So Jesus takes these 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he tells the disciples to organize the people into groups of about 50. And they organize the people, and they sit them down in groups of 50. And they took the food to each of the groups, Jesus multiplied that food in order to feed all of those people. So every group, they brought those loaves and fishes, and they fed this group, and they didn't run out. And they went to the next group, and they didn't run out. And every single time, in order to feed those thousands of people, God multiplied the bread and the fish. What a miracle. What a miracle. That is something that obviously God cannot do. that only God can do, sorry. Well, when all the people were fed, there was actually so much left over that each of the disciples took a basket of food home with them. Okay, so not only did God multiply the food to feed all the people there, but there was enough for each of the disciples to take a basket full home with them. And the disciples, they would doubt Jesus again, but they would later believe so strongly that Jesus was God that they would go and tell the whole world. So this is one of those times that Jesus, he didn't perform this miracle just for the people that were there, just for the thousands of people that came to want to see him and want to be healed or bring their friends and family to be healed. He didn't just do it for them. He did it for the disciples so that they would see that he is who he says that he is. And so that's our story today. And I hope that this makes you think about how amazing God is and that how he is our provider and he takes care of us and he always gives us enough. And sometimes he gives us some to be left over. And what an amazing God that he is, that he's so big and that he is such a provider and that he is big enough to take care of all of our needs, okay? So, as we look at our memory verse for this week, it is John 14:3, okay? John 14:3, and it's Jesus talking, and he's talking to his disciples, and he says, "And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am." So let me read that again, because it's kind of confusing. John 14:3, "And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am." Okay, and so he's telling his disciples, and he's telling us that Jesus was on earth, and he tells the disciples that I'm going to prepare a place for you. And where do you think that place is? That place is heaven. He's going to heaven to prepare a place for them and for us. And if he goes to heaven to prepare a place for us, that means he's going to come back. And when he comes back, then we get to go and be where he is in heaven. And that might be when we die. That will be when we die, or if we're still alive and Jesus returns, okay? So either way, we're going where he is. We're going to heaven one day. And so tomorrow's lesson, we're going to talk more about this, okay? But I want you to practice your memory verse and think about your story this week. Think about how you can show compassion and think about how all the ways that God provides for you and takes care of you, all right? I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, my friends, we're here for math, all right? It is Monday, it is May 11th, and we're here for math. So what you're going to do is you're going to get out your math page 317 and 318, but I have a surprise for you. I only want you to do page 318. It's the last week, so I'm going to kind of let you off easy. All right, so I want you to just do page 318, and we're actually you're going to do that. Well, let's look at that together. So go ahead and get out page 318. It is, you should see a bunch of dimes and pennies on it, okay? So you know that when we look at a number, if we look at 73 cents, right? How many dimes does it take to make 73 cents? And how many pennies does it take to make 73 cents? Well, we know that it takes 7 dimes, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 7 dimes, and then 73 would be how many pennies? 71, 72, 73. So how many dimes would be in 73 cents? 7 dimes, and 3 pennies. And so what number tells you how many dimes? The 7 or the 3? The 7, right? So you're going to look at those pennies and dimes and those amounts on number 1 and number 2. And then you're going to circle the number of dimes in each amount. So let's look at number 1. The first one says, how many cents? 23 cents. So let's count it. 10, 20, 21, 22, 23. Which number there tells how many dimes? The 2 or the 3? The 2, obviously, because the 2 is in the tens place. All right. Now, look at the next one. You have 17 cents. You have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Which number tells how many dimes? The 1 or the 7? The 1, okay? Easy breezy. Look at the next one, 31 cents. 10, 20, 30, 31. Which number tells you how many dimes? The 3, so you're going to circle the 3. Now, on number 2, the directions say circle the number of pennies in each amount. So let's look at it. 23, they did it for you. 10, 20, 21, 22, 23. Which number tells how many pennies, the 2 or the 3? The 3, okay, because it's the ones, all right? The same thing, you're going to do, look at 17 cents. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Which number tells how many pennies, the 1 or the 7 in 17 cents? Definitely the 7. And the same thing for 31. Which number tells you how many pennies, the 3 or the 1? The 1, because it has only 1 penny in it. All right. Now, look at number 3. You're going to write the sum and the difference. You're going to add or subtract. Now, remember, when you add or subtract using money, you have that little, it's not a period, but what is it called in math? A decimal point. Remember, when you add or subtract using a decimal point, you just bring your decimal point straight down, okay? So you should have a period in your, not a period, a decimal point in your answer, okay? So pay attention to your signs. Pay attention if you need to borrow and regroup, okay? And I want you to do number 3 by yourself, having a grown-up check it for you. And guess what? You're done with math for today. You do not have to do the other side of the paper, okay? And I'll see you back for Tuesday's lesson. Okay, so we're going to do reading a little bit different this week. It's our last story, and so I'm actually going to do this with you. So I want you to open your reading book to your the story for this week. It's called The Secret Place. All right, so we're on Monday, reading for Monday, and we are on, in your reading book, page 30. I want you to look at page 30 in your reading book. The name of our story is called The Secret Place. All right, and in our story, a small boy, finds a secret place in a big city where he lives. And it's a quiet place that he's going to share with some mallards, their ducklings, and other animals, okay? So a mallard is just a kind of duck, okay? So I want you to look at page 30 and page 31 in your reading book. All right, what do you see in the picture? What do you see there? Do you see a nest? Maybe a grassy nest? What do you see in that nest? Do you see some eggs? What kind of eggs do you think? Maybe some duck eggs, right? Because there's a little duckling that's hatched. And then look on page 31. You see a nest, but do you also see some buildings and a truck? All right. What do you think? Do you think that nest should be by those buildings and that truck? What do you think it sounds like there in that nest if it's that close to the buildings and the truck? Do you think it's loud? Yeah, I think so too. All right. Do you think that it's very noisy? Do you think that the ducks are kind of scared? Maybe. I think I would be if I was the duck. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to read about this. And so as we read, I want you to think about 2 questions. Where is the secret place, and why is the secret place so special? Okay? Where is the secret place, and why is the secret place so special? So Miss Penny's actually going to read your story with you today. All right? So look on, we're continuing on our story, page 32. I want you to look at that picture. Man, what does that look like? Definitely looks like a big city, right? You see the buildings, you see the roads, you see all the traffic and the trucks. Yeah. Notice the color. Is it very bright and pretty? It's kind of dirty looking, isn't it? Definitely. All right, so let's read, and I'll read and you just follow along, okay? So we're going to read. In the heart of the city where I live, there is a secret place. Close by is a freeway where cars and trucks boom, and a railroad track with freight trains that shunt and grunt. There are warehouses with windows blinded by dust and names paint scrawled on their brick walls. The lines on the telephone and electric poles web the sky. Smokestacks blow clouds to dim the sun. So you see that big road there? That's the freeway that they're talking about. We might call it the highway or the interstate. Kind of means the same thing. But in the heart of the city where I live, low down, hidden, a river runs. The water is dark and shallow in its concrete bed. Bushes and tangled weeds cling to the slopes of the concrete walls. Hardly anyone knows the river is here. Hardly anyone cares. Why do you think that they don't know that it's there? Do you think they're too busy to notice it? Because they're going to work, or they're trying to get where they're going, right? They're zooming by in their cars, or they're on the train, or so maybe they don't notice it, right? And it says the water is dark and shallow in its concrete bed. Is there really a bed there? No, it just means where the water lies, okay? So when they're talking about some of these things, they're using what's called imagery. And imagery is what an author uses to get you to make a good picture in your brain, okay? It gives you good details in order to help you make a good picture of it in your brain. And so it talks about how the river runs in its concrete bed. The bushes and the tangled weeds cling to the slopes of the concrete walls. So if you look up the concrete walls, you might see a vine or a bush, okay? Or some plants trying to grow up it, right? All right, so let's keep going. Page 36. Mrs. Arend knows, and Mr. Ramirez and Peter and Janet, who are married. I know, and my father knows too. He works a forklift in one of the brick warehouses, and I showed him the secret place the day I found it. So we see him in the picture. He's showing his father the secret place. And he says other people know, right? The white egret found it too. I watched the bird float down, its legs thin and reaching, its head plumes fanned. We've seen some of those birds where we live, right? What did the egret find? Did the egret find the secret place? Yes. The green-winged teal knows, the buffleheads that come to the water skim know, and the circling mallards know. I've seen them here before. Peter says last year there was a mallard nest lined with feathers from the mother's breast. Later there were ducklings. They'll nest here again, Peter says. I jump up and down. Ducklings, perfect. So you see the duck? When they talk about the mallard, that's the one with the green head. That's the one that has, it's the male duck, okay? And then that brown speckly one is the female duck, right? The mommy duck. And so last year there was a nest, and this year now there's another nest, right? How would you feel if you saw a nest of ducklings? Would it make you really happy? I would be like, oh, it's so cute, right? Mrs. Arend and Mr. Ramirez and Janet and Peter bring binoculars. They let me look through them. The sparrows lined up on the barbed wire fence seem as big as mud hens. Peter tells me the names of the birds. He is like a bird himself, with hair the color of a cinnamon teal. Can you see Peter? Which one's Peter in that picture? It says hair as color as a cinnamon teal. Which one do you think? the one with the red hair, right? And so they're looking at binoculars. And when you look at binoculars, what does it make it? Does it make it look like close up when it's really far away? Yes. And so that's what they're looking at. And when they look, they see all kinds of birds there. They see mallards, they see different kinds of ducks, different kinds of birds, right? What an amazing thing to see in the city. In the heart of the city where I live, there is always noise. The growl of traffic, the snort of trains, the beep beep of a backing truck. The secret place has its own noise. The cackle of coots, the quack of teals, the rah-rah of mallards that ring the sky. So in the city, there's lots of noise, but also in this secret place, there's its own kind of noise. All the animals that are there, right? And so is the little boy, is he just like so amazed by this secret place? Yeah, he is. He thinks that, and his neighbors and his, dad, they think that it is really cool to, in the middle of this big, huge, bustling, loud city, there's this secret place where these birds and these ducks have made their home, okay? So you can go back and reread just that part that Ms. Penny read with you. And now you're actually going to work on your reading workbook pages 273 and 274. And they'll go through, they're about what we just read. So I want you to work on those, and that'll be it for today for reading. Okay? See you tomorrow.